You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Thank you for joining me here today on this first Friday review of the new year. Excited to have you and excited to be going over some of the books that I've read over the past week or so when I've had a little time off, I should say, between the Christmas and New Year's week. I also wanted to go over a brand new product that's going to help you better absorb your vitamin D, which we all need this time of the year. And also, last but not least, on every Friday review now going forward, what I'm going to try to do is actually highlight some of the superhero vitamins, as I'll call them, and minerals that you may not know what they're being used for. So a lot of people take a multi, or they take an all-in-one, or they might take a different type of mineral that they've seen that they're short on or they believe they need. What I want to do is I just want to give you maybe a little 3-4 minute synopsis on all of these great vitamins and minerals that our body desperately needs. Because there's so many conflicting reports out there. Like literally, we just got a question in our Facebook group, which was a great question, saying that, I read this article saying that, well, maybe vitamins, maybe minerals, these things aren't necessarily good for us. But the problem is this. When you look at these articles and they come out in something like the New York Times or they come out in the Wall Street Journal, what they're not telling you is the in-depth discussion behind the study. For example, what this person asked was, this study says vitamin D and calcium are bad for you. And I said, okay, well, let me see the link to the study. So I went and I actually did the research. And a lot of people aren't doing the research, or understandably so, they don't have the background and actually what does all this research mean? So the vitamin D that they're talking about showed that later in life, it can lead to more osteoporosis or bone breakdown. And I said to them, I've actually went over this specific study. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to link it up today in the show notes. So simply go to stephencabral.com/670. stephencabral.com/670 for today's show and all the show note links to all the books, the studies, all that good stuff. Well, here's the thing. It was last year I did this podcast on vitamin D by this doctor who's very well known, but just again, a lot of doctors, when they're coming from particular scope of practice, such as an MD, they have not really learned about nutritional supplements or nutritional biochemistry. And it's not against them. Just keep in mind that it's not taught in medical school. So if it's not taught in medical school, you may not have done real study and real research on it. But this doctor quoted studies about vitamin D supplements, cherry-picked them, and literally used vitamin D2 in some of his studies, or studies where the people were given 300,000 IUs of vitamin D all by itself, like once a month. And it showed that it created more calcium buildup in the arteries and more osteoporosis. And, again, if you know about good nutritional supplements, you know that the body has to take them in a usable form. Vitamin D2 is not that usable form. Okay, the other thing is this. You never give vitamin D in 300,000 IUs just to make it easier for the patient and take it once a month. That will lead to then, yes, calcium retention in the bloodstream. And where's that calcium coming from? Well, it's being pulled from your bones. It's being leached from your bones. So now we understand why that's happening. You take a high dosage of vitamin D, well over 10,000 IUs a day, or in this case, 300,000 units, which again is absurd. It's going to actually leach the calcium from your bones, okay? Where does the calcium end up? It ends up in your bloodstream. What happens? Well, the arteries then start to become calcified. Again, you have to understand, and it's not for the average person out there, but doctors, they really have to do a better job, and especially journalists. But journalists sometimes are the worst, and the reason they're the worst is this is a sensational study. Since it's a sensational study, I'm going to print it. I'm going to get myself a little bit of notoriety, even though it might hurt the consumer in the long term, because nutritional supplements, as you're going to start to see every week, are what the body needs. And the problem is the body lacks them. And all you have to do is a hair tissue mineral analysis or an organic acids test to find that out. If you do a hair tissue mineral analysis, you will find out all of your mineral levels. Undisputed, there it is. All your mineral levels right there. What your body's using, what it's excreting. Organic acids test, it's going to show you all of your vitamins, all your B vitamins, your vitamin C, all those great things. Gets to show you if you are absorbing them and using them. It will show you exactly that. Simple hair test, simple urine test. Those are my two favorite tests. If I had to pick two in the entire world, those would be them for overall good health. Now, the other kicker to this study, this is where it gets even more interesting, is that this particular article or study or roundup was actually completed by none other than the American Medical Association. And what is the American Medical Association? Well, essentially, it is a private company. Not a lot of people know this, but it's a private organization. They tried to bar chiropractors in the United States. They lost that battle. They're trying to block all nutritional supplements. They have lost that battle. Now, they're trying to get nutritional supplements to be done in a very specific way so that they can maybe be patented by pharmaceutical companies. So essentially what they're saying is they don't like nutritional supplements because nutritional supplements is a booming industry. And the reason why it's a booming industry is that nutritional supplements help people to get healthy when used appropriately. Should you use calcium carbonate? No, I've talked about that before. You want to use an absorbable form of calcium, and you want to always take calcium with its cofactors like magnesium. So these old school thought processes 20 years ago, MDs are still doing it now. Oh, you need to take calcium once you hit menopause. That's insane. I mean, really, these are insane things. Please take your vitamin, mineral, all of that advice, not from a journalist, not from an MD, unless they've done postdoctoral training in functional medicine. Even at that, they have to be really an integrative doctor that uses naturopathic medicine. So my recommendation is to find a local naturopathic doctor, find a functional medicine doctor that really knows, not green medicine where they're just kind of doing, here's a vitamin, here's this, here's that, who's really looking at you internally, doing saliva-based testing, hair testing, urine testing, looking at the entire body, not just blood work, because that's not enough to look at those levels, just looking at basically venous-based blood on a blood draw, or you can run one of the lab tests that we offer. So just choose one of those modalities to really see the results for yourself and understand that the American Medical Association, they're a business. Their business is to keep people on pharmaceutical drugs. Their business is not to help people get healthy naturally, not to use diet, not to use exercise, not to use de-stress-based protocols, all of those things for the body. And again, in my opinion, calcium, magnesium, vitamin D, B vitamins, none of these things are patentable. You can use whatever you choose as the best modality for you, but remember, you have to get it in the absorbable form. So when there's a study that's pro-magnesium, studies pro-vitamin D, and then there are studies against. And the reason is this. The studies against are usually using cheap synthetic forms. That's why you have to go with the functional medicine-based brand as well. So the Equilibrium Nutrition is our line. You don't even have to buy our products, but what I recommend is that you go to stevencabral.com/store, just click on supplements, look at the ingredients in our products. The reason why I ask you to look at the ingredients in the products, because you know that these are products that I've done the research on, that I've said, okay, these are the ones that I'm willing to put in my body, that I use with my family, my wife, my 2 little girls, that I recommend in my practice. They have to be the best of the best. These are the most absorbable forms, so that's what I use. Now, if you want a really synthetic form, well, like I said before, you'll use magnesium oxide, you'll use calcium carbonate, you'll use vitamin D2, you'll use, instead of vitamin E, like a good D-alpha tocopherol, you'll use cheaper based forms of that as well. So you just have to keep in mind is that it's not a lot more money to spend on these functional medicine-based supplements, but they're worth your investment. They really are. Or don't take them. Because again, these studies show you use cheap ones, they're not going to be good for you. All you have to do is you get a good product and you take it at the right dosage as well. You'll notice that all of our products are a good dosage. They're not an overload dosage. They're enough of a dosage to help supplement healthy eating. Healthy eating is always number 1. Nutritional supplements are number 2. The reason is the nutritional supplements only even really work when you're putting them along with food for the most part because they're water soluble, they're fat soluble, all those types of things. So what I'm recommending is that we don't have to be perfect with our nutrition, but do keep in mind that even organic foods do not have the same vitamin and mineral content that they did even 50 years ago. So when you say, oh, we get all your nutrition from good, healthy eating, well, that's not true because I'll tell you right now, there is no study that I've seen that shows, oh, this person ate a good diet and got all the vitamins and minerals that they needed. That's not going to happen because I can go on every single day to an app, to any type of food-based calculator, and I can show people that unless you're using a good quality nutritional supplement or you're supplementing with things like greens powders and all-in-ones, that type of thing, you're not going to be getting all the micros and macros, or I should say micros that you need, your vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, all those things. And because they're not in the food. So if it's not in the food, where are you getting it? And the problem is it's not in the soil, so it can't be uptaken into the food. I could talk about this all day, but I just want you to know is that I'm going to make it my job because, again, when people ask questions, it's my job to hopefully help and respond. Every week, I'm going to be doing a highlighted vitamin and mineral. So I was going to save this to the end, but why don't I do it right now before my book review? And I'm going to go over our highlighted vitamin for the day that you might not have really heard about before. I'm going to call them a micronutrient. Much better to call them micronutrients because as you'll see today, the highlighted one is choline. But why is choline so important? You might not have even heard of choline before. Well, one of the reasons why it is so important is that it has, just like a lot of other vitamins, that it's a precursor to other things as well. So choline is a precursor to something called acetylcholine. Why is acetylcholine important? Well, if you're someone where you feel like you have a little bit of brain fog, your muscles aren't as strong, they don't have as much stamina, you don't have as much get up and go, not as much drive, you might be lacking acetylcholine. Now, you don't take acetylcholine. What you do is you get good quality choline from your food, from nutritional supplements, and it helps then to energize the body. But besides the muscles themselves, because choline is phenomenal for the muscles, it also helps with the liver. It helps in two ways. Okay. One thing it does is it helps with detoxification. So that's very important with having enough choline. Okay. Most people aren't going to be deficient in choline because hopefully they're getting enough through their nutrition, a little bit of supplementation. But it will help prevent chronic liver damage, those types of things as well. One of the other reasons why I like choline, though, for the liver is that it helps to decrease the amount of triglyceride accumulation. So if you're someone, you're like, whoa, my triglycerides are starting to get high. Well, one, I've talked about this before, but you want to lower your intake of fructose in your diet, okay? So that's a big one. And again, I've talked about that before. Very, very important, whether it's from alcohol or processed foods. Now, the other thing, though, is that choline is also what we call a methyl-based donor. So it's going to help with something in the mitochondria and the production of what's called trimethylglycine. And I usually don't like to get as much into the science, but I want to get into this a little bit, and this is why it's important. Trimethylglycine is very, very important as a methyl donor. It helps in the methyl donor process at lowering homocysteine. And homocysteine is one of those things that I always tell people to run on their annual blood labs. I say, ask your MD or PCP to run this, or use the Life Extension Lab that I recommend. Run this, check it out. Because if your homocysteine is high, we need to add more folate, we need to add more B12, we need to add more TMG, trimethylglycine, a few other things. There's a great product by Thorne called MethylGuard Plus, okay? You use that if your homocysteine is above a 9 or a 10, really important on your blood work. Again, I could go into so much of this. That's why it really gets me going when there's some journalist out there who's just trying to write something sensational, get their name out that says, oh, supplements could be hurtful for you. Trust me, supplements can save your life. You don't need to use them in great dosages, but when something's wrong, at least for a period of time, you want to use them to rebalance the body because clearly there's a deficiency or a toxicity. So important. I mean, that's the tipping point, what got me better. And I've been doing this now for quite some time. And without nutritional supplements, people's digestive system simply isn't strong enough to get the nutrition they need in. Okay, a couple more things about choline and why it's so important. Why is it so great for brain, for mood, all of those things? Okay, so let's go with brain first and nervous system. So important as a woman who's pregnant, thinking about getting pregnant, or even post-pregnancy to be taking in choline. Again, you can get this through a good multivitamin and a B complex as well. Because one, it's going to help with the brain development of the child and nervous system development of the child. That's why it's so important to be getting this in. And then also really important for the production of something called SAMe. It supports that. It's called adenylyl methionine. And why that's important is that helps so much with not only seasonal affective disorder, depression, anxiety, boosting mood. And I find that it also boosts energy as well. Really, really important. So that's one part of choline. That's one highlight. Now, how would you get it? Like, I mean, this thing is obviously good for your brain. It's good for energy. It's good for muscle. It's good for people with methylation-based issues, for the nervous system. Okay, so where do we get it? Well, the number one way that people get it, that I talk about, is eggs. So if you're able to eat eggs, if you're not vegan, or if you do eat eggs, even if you're a vegetarian, you decided to eat eggs, couple times a week, getting eggs into your diet, maybe twice a week, 2 eggs at a time. The egg yolk is where you're going to get the majority of that choline, so you can't go for just the whites alone. Where else can you get it? Biggest ones are peanuts and liver. Actually, getting liver as well from a healthy animal, you could decide to do that. Now, if you're not going to eat those foods, understood, you can get it from cruciferous-based vegetables, okay? So cruciferous vegetables is a great one. Your broccoli, I talked about that quite a bit, Brussels sprouts. Okay, spinach, beets, and some grains are also a good form of choline, and some shellfish as well. So by getting more of those foods in your diet, especially if you are vegan, if you're getting more of the cruciferous vegetables, a lot of that dark greens. Nice thing about the cruciferous-based vegetables as well is you're going to get those that are going to be working on detoxification as well. So can't recommend that enough. If you are vegan, I mean, really, my job is to support you, and my job is to also let you know that very, very few vegans who don't eat any fish or any eggs or anything like that, forget about meat, we'll throw that out for now, we'll just say those, it's going to be hard to stay up. So I do recommend either the Daily Activated Multi or the Daily Nutritional Support Shake, which are both vegan-based, especially the Daily Nutritional Support Shake, which we went to many great lengths to make sure that there are no animal, fish, egg, anything like that. It's completely hypoallergenic as well. So that's a great way to get it. And what would I say? How else could you get it through nutritional supplements? Well, and again, you don't have to specifically use these, but I want you to look them up. Our Daily Nutritional Support Shake is going to give you an extra 25 milligrams a day with our phosphatidylcholine, which is great for the brain. And then you're going to get in the Daily Activated Multi that has 50 milligrams. So you either use the Daily Nutritional Support Shake or the Activated Multi. And the last one is if you wanted to get a boost. So usually I'm recommending, my thing is this. I recommend the Daily Nutritional Support Shake because when you make a smoothie, you're also adding in the high antioxidant berries. And then you're going to add in maybe some spinach or some greens or the Daily Nutritional Support Powder. I should say the Daily Fruit and Vegetable Blend. That's up to you. But a lot of people need a bigger boost. So when I run an organic acids test and I look at people and I say, okay, this person has fatigue, energy issues, brain fog, maybe other issues going on, and they're low in B vitamins, I also add 1 capsule of the Daily Activated, I should say 1 capsule of the Activated B Complex. That's what I'm recommending because it has a full 100 milligrams of choline in it. And a lot of people don't know this, but it has 200 milligrams of trimethylglycine, which is going to help with a lot of those methylation issues, a lot of those mood issues, a lot of those brain fog, and a lot of the overall inflammation. It's one of my favorite products. It took me a long time to get this formulation because I wanted it to be a little lower in folate because you're also getting folate from a multi or from your daily shake. Phenomenal product. You can use it really anytime. You can use it with pre, post, peri-pregnancy. It's an adult-based product, though. You're not going to use it with kids. Hopefully that helps. Again, every week I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be going over all the different B vitamins. Like, what's the difference with niacin? What are the different types of niacin? What about B6? What's this big thing I keep hearing, Dr. Cabral talk about B6? Why that? And then all the different forms of vitamin C. I'm going to talk about, some obscure ones as well that maybe you haven't heard about, such as, well, I know that you've heard about the B vitamins, but what about B1, thiamine? Like, why take that specifically? Why is that good for people with thyroid-based issues? So I'm going to go through all the different vitamins, all the different minerals like chromium and all the different types. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'll do that each and every Friday. We're going to go through one of those. So thank you for tuning in and checking out today's highlight, which is our superhero of the day, which is choline. And now the last part, just a fun part. I wanted to always add this. A lot of people ask, what books are you reading? Well, between Christmas and New Year's, I always like to stock up on a big handful of books. I also like to review, previous books from the past year. So I go through those. We go up to Maine for the week, just really relaxing. This past week was the temperatures were awful outside. It was literally negatives, real feel of negatives every single day. So it was brutal. So a lot of family time inside, but I always find my time to read first thing in the morning, watching the sunrise. So incredible. Love watching that happen over the ocean. It's just absolutely incredible. Wouldn't trade it literally for the world. It's amazing. And then I'll do a little bit if my girls are taking a rest, and then a little bit at night as well when we're not entertaining, having people over. But I get plenty of reading in. I love it. It's just a quiet time of the year to reflect on 2017. And then really, my goals for 2018. And I always set goals for myself because I always need to feel like I'm growing. When I'm growing, I'm happy. When I'm not growing, I'm stagnant. And that does not lead to a happy me. So that's one of the things I found, and that helps me out. So what are some of the books that I read? So I've got a bunch. I've got I'll just go over the first one that's just literally coming top of mind right now. And it's a book called True North. And it was recommended to me. I was at a conference. I was speaking there. But usually when I'm at a conference, I like to hang out for a little bit. I like to listen to the other speakers. I like to absorb as much knowledge as I can from them. I'm already there. And I'll tell you, people like, who do you study? Who do you look up to? Everyone, like literally everyone. When someone says like, why would you continue to read books? Why would you continue to read like the most popular books, the stuff that you already know about that's already out? Well, the reason is that I'm inspired by other people. I'm inspired by health practitioners. I'm inspired by other personal trainers, by nutritionists, by everyone out there, by people just trying to do good work. And it's never ending. And it's a cycle that you just pick up new information. So I was at this conference. Someone said you have to check out the book called True North or Discover Your True North by Bill George. Again, I'll link up everything today in the show notes. So I read it, checked it out. I don't know what it is, but I used to read more books on like business development or how to get your message out to people, those types of things, because I wanted to be able to affect change. And I know the only way that I'm able to affect change, help get my message out to people is to learn more about it. But these books, a lot of books, they just don't resonate with me as much. For whatever reason, I just like to be me. That's it. I just like to do whatever it is that I'm doing in my way. And I try to give those recommendations to other health practitioners that I mentor as well. Meaning that you have to understand, how to create a website, those types of things. You have to know that. Like those are the basics. But in terms of that, I want to take tips from other people, but I want to always try to just do the right thing. That's basically it. I want to let that be the guiding force of what I do. I don't want anything to feel forced. I just want to try to provide the information in my own way. And if that resonates with some people, great. That's that. I'm going to try to do more of that and help those particular people out. However, if you are a business leader, someone to kind of lead in your space or maybe lead your team, I thought it was an excellent book for that. So he also has a previous book called The Authentic Leadership or Authentic Leadership. Check it out if you're looking to develop your leadership capabilities or capacity. There's a lot of stories in there for you. It's more corporate than I am. I'm not corporate at all. I actually kind of revel against that. I'm not a fan of it. I like to feel like we're more of grassroots. I like to really get in there and just, if there's something I don't like, I talk about it. I'm not afraid to talk about it. And if there's something I do like and I'm passionate about it, like nutritional supplements, like good quality, things like that, I'm going to recommend it. I'm going to recommend it wholeheartedly. So hopefully that helps with that. That's a book you can check out. Bill George, Discover Your True North. It was a good book. Have nothing negative to say against it. I just found that throughout the years, again, I've been doing this for a little bit of time now. I'm less into that and more into psychology, philosophy, obviously health and nutrition, which you'll see. Okay, second book. I've talked about Alfie Kohn before. Punished by Rewards. You'll remember me talking about that on a previous show. Well, here's another book. And although I've did a cursory overview of it, I really read it in depth this time. It's called Unconditional Parenting. Older book, great book. If you have kids, especially young kids, can't recommend enough reading this book. Really enjoy it. It talks about how to get your children to do the things that they should do that's going to make them a very well-rounded human being, but to get them to do the things because they want to and not you controlling their actions. So we don't really want to control our children's actions in the way that we're forcing them to do things, good or bad. And the reason is that they can then push past against that, or if they're ever then on their own with the ability to make their own choice, they might push back in the future. So I really like the book. I actually love the book. I like Alfie Kohn. I like his philosophy. It's very different. I mean, it really is. And I, for whatever reason, just seem to resonate with that. It makes a lot of sense from a psychological based standpoint. So Alfie Kohn, Unconditional Parenting, short book, great book. Check that out. And then I read a bunch of other books, but one book that I wanted to highlight right now was, well, we'll get to that one last because that's great for the functional medicine people out there. The next one I read was Edible Wild Plants. I want to get more into this year, more into wilderness-based, wellness-based, kind of like from a standpoint of traditional kind of botany and wild plants and edible plants, those types of things, just from my own fascination standpoint. Because I've studied medical-based herbs quite in depth, yoga-based herbs, and got to actually study in the Himalayas in India, which was incredible. But This one was more wild plants, edible wild plants. So I'd like to see what it was all about. It's more like a field guide. So the book that I read, I've read a couple now, but the book, I thought this was a great one. Thomas Elliott's book called Edible Wild Plants, a North American Field Guide to Over 200 Natural Foods. This was a great one since, again, being in Maine, very, very different from me living in Boston in the city. When I'm up there, there is the ability to actually look around in nature a little bit. Look at these plants. And I just felt like as I'm walking along, trying to teach my, two girls about all these different plants, is that I couldn't identify a lot of them. Now, I could identify quite a bit when it comes to medical-based herbs, but those aren't your typical things growing that you see around you. So I really wanted to get more into that. I want to learn more of that. When I'm looking at what is my growth, well, here's one thing. I want to learn more and understand more about which plants are edible. In a pinch, like if you ever needed to eat some edible plants that are out there. Anyway, that's where my mind goes. That was one of my fascinations, so I thought I'd share that with you. And then for the health practitioners out there, I want to give you one more book. Dr. Alex Vasquez, pretty interesting guy in general. Enjoy his books. They're short textbooks. I mean, that's the best way for me to describe it. I've read a bunch of his. They're only about 100 pages long, but they're in depth. I mean, they're real science-based. So this would be for someone who's a health practitioner. You've kind of gone over the basics and you want to get a little bit more in depth. The book that I read, just again, like, this is what I do for fun, reading on viruses. I read on viral replication and immune system strategies. So this book's called Antiviral Strategies and Immune System or Immune Nutrition Against Colds, Flu, Herpes, AIDS, Hepatitis, Ebola. So really good book. Quite enjoyed it. Talked about the nervous system, how it becomes imbalanced. So again, it's not, when we get autoimmune-based issues, the immune system is not really messing up. It's become imbalanced, and it's become imbalanced for a reason. This is a good book. I really enjoyed it. It's just enough information. It's not too intense at all, but you should have a little bit of a functional medicine background. So if you want to check this book out, I will again link it up in the show notes. These are all on Amazon, of course. Hopefully you enjoyed today's Friday review. Gave a little bit of a rant, of course, on bad journalism as well as bad science in general. Scientists not being able to differentiate between the absorbable form of vitamins and minerals versus the non-absorbable form by the human body and what the difference happens within the body. Then we went over our highlighted choline of the day and our mineral of the day. And then we went over a couple books that I did read and not the ones that I've reviewed because, of course, you know a lot of those that I talk about all the time. So thank you for tuning in today. Really appreciate it. And check back tomorrow when we go over our community's questions on our weekends. Host calls. Take care. Have a great weekend. Ever wonder what the best sauna, blue blockers, sleep trackers, wake lights, salt lamps, or other health gadgets are? Or what about the top non-toxic mattresses, sheets, soaps, bath products, toothpaste, and cookware? Or would you like to know the cleanest choices for hemp parts, meal delivery services, supplements, and much more? I personally curated, researched, and now created a resource page of all of my top picks that continues to grow each week. These are the exact products I use in my own life, with my family, in my private practice, and they're the ones I trust. To find out all of my up-to-date recommendations and all the details, simply head on over to stephencabral.com/resources.